Hello, Rick and Brent. I'm Anthony Harper here in the city of Sderot, near the Gaza border, just about a mile from the Gaza border. And what I'm doing here is to expose the truth, reporting the truth about how practically PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, is impacting people's lives. A lot of children, a lot of people that live here, specifically you think about children, the great impact that it has on their emotional development. So these are very serious issues. At any moment, a rocket could be hurtling this way with less than 10 seconds to respond, and sometimes not even a warning that would be announced at all, that you wouldn't be able to hear it in time. So there's these temporary shelters. I'm sitting in one of these temporary shelters right now, set in a playground near a school. But these are scattered throughout the city, and of course there are more permanent shelters with food supplies, bathroom facilities or whatever, connected to houses and other building facilities. But this is one example of many here. And as far as what can be done to help the people here at Sderot is to, of course, financially support people in the development and the construction of these bomb shelters, the maintenance of those. For those that want to actually support reporting the truth in the midst of fake news, people, you can go to, I invite you to go to our website, imcnews.org. Click on that donate button that you see there and make a contribution, a donation to tax deductible in support of reporting good news in the midst of fake news. We are surrounded by many lies and distortions, and people can make a difference by supporting Christian media. Think about the influence at the White House, what could be done there if Christian media had more of a voice. So in order for that to happen, there'd be need a lot more in donations and funding to have that daily presence at the White House, which is actually a world stage where people can make a difference. Well, Rick and Brant, thank you for letting me join you today here. I'm speaking from inside this shelter, temporary shelter, bomb shelter in Sderot, right near the Gaza border. I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here in Sderot. This is a town very close to the Gaza border, and I'm with Doron Kedar. And
Yes, sir.
good to talk with you again. And now we're down here to check out how bombs, rockets coming from Gaza are affecting the people here. This is an example of one of the bomb shelters here.
Yeah.
It's set in a playground.
Yep.
And the idea of, I think a lot of people might be concerned about PTSD, the effect of rockets on the children. This is in a playground area. So what are the cases, what's the prevalence of PTSD here for
That's a great question.
children?
That's a great question. I will tell you this. We've had way over thousands of rockets and mortars fired into these communities and other, this is the biggest city actually outside that gets constantly bombarded, and also the other communities. We've had very small fatalities and injuries, very small. The sad reality is actually, as far as what casualties have we had, is PTSD. That's where we have been hit. That's where we have been affected. And from the people that work here and the social workers and so on, I remember they told me years ago that the number is over 90% of the children that grew up in this town have PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which, by the way, is somebody who fought in wars and other friends of mine who have fought in wars. We struggle from horrors of war, and that's what PTSD is how do you handle the sight of blood, guts, death, and so on and so forth. So the children here grow up with that. They don't have to go to war to experience that or to suffer from that. And so for people who want to know what is PTSD, well, that's what it is. It's what people who fight wars struggle with. Children who don't fight these wars are suffering the ramifications of that because they live under constant threat of their life. They pee their beds. They have nightmares. It's awful.
Very serious situation here, and these bomb shelters are in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
with bus stops. I think you mentioned with,
right.
with school grounds,
Yep.
and then also as far as regarding shopping centers and all that.
Yes, there's a shopping center just over here, and you'll notice there's a bunch of bomb shelters just around this is actually the old center. There's a newer center here to Sderot, of course, like any city that grows and so on and so forth. But this is actually the traditional old center where you have the old market, where they have the open market on specific days of the week, where they come and they bring their fresh fish and vegetables and fruits and so on, nuts, berries, etc., to sell to the moms that want to cook and make a nice meal for Sabbath and so on. So here in this traditional center, you'll have bomb shelters all throughout, and anywhere where there's schools, office places, you name it.
And as far as reaction time, the rockets come in here. So how many seconds do people have to get to these bomb shelters?
Because of the close proximity that we're in, less than 10 seconds. Less than 10 seconds. Sometimes you don't have one, because actually the radar system isn't quick enough to even alert you.
And these bomb shelters, as far as sufficiency for people to be living in them, now these shelters, I didn't see anything where there's no food here or water or whatever. But in many of the bomb shelters, there's a food supply to people if they need to be in there for
Long periods of time.
long periods of time.
That's correct. These are the mobile bomb shelters that you'll see peppered throughout the whole city, which is insane. I mean, it's an insane reality. This is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for people to live under a reality where you have to have a bomb shelter within seconds of reach. And so that's what you'll see with these. They're not made for long-term, they're made for the short blitz attack, and you need to wait it out and so on. But the other regular bomb shelters, so to speak, the ones that are in building complexes or in houses, yes, they'll be packed with supplies of, anything from baby food for your baby, your kids, diapers, water, food for the other people, and so on, sleeping beds, you name it. Because sometimes when this area gets under harsh attack, which does happen every so often, once every few years and so on, they have to remain in there for hours at a time, sometimes even days.
Wow. So, the practical issues about going to the bathroom in these temporary places, there's no place to go to the bathroom here.
Not in
Not
this
very
one,
close to
no,
us, so-
not in this one, but the more permanent ones, like I said,
Right.
that have the food storages and the baby stuff and all that, those will oftentimes have also a place to relieve yourself, even a place to get showered and cleaned up.
Well, I want to encourage people to pray for the citizens here of Sderot. Thinking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, was very serious, and it affects a lot of people and affected by war. This is a war zone, and those rockets are flying. Very serious situations to deal with, and so please pray for the peace of Sderot. We pray we encourage people to pray for the people in the Gaza, that they won't be inclined to send rockets over this way. Obviously, we know that only Yeshua, the Messiah, can bring peace, and we pray that will happen very soon.
Then you have this waiting area, right? Mainly for going back home, where you're sitting on the bench where you normally would at a bus stop and wait for your bus. You just have your bench or something to cover you from the rain and all. Here, it's a bomb shelter. You know, there's nothing to do. And then, of course, you'll always have people who are racist in any culture.
We're at a playground here, and there's disguised here very playfully as a centipede, but really a bomb shelter, a safe place for kids. But these bomb shelters are scattered out throughout the city, and in this playground setting, it's sad to say, as we were talking about earlier, about the example of PTSD, the prevalence of that. And the rating was as high as how many percent?
It's over 90% of the children that grow up here.
Okay, it's very serious.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage people to be involved, to pray for this area, for the children, and for all the help that is needed in providing that support for the children. And of course, I believe, and from a Christian perspective, only Christ is the hope in the midst of all this despair. And we're going to go inside one of these bomb shelters. out and see what it's like. Okay, here inside, this is referred to as a centipede, but really a bomb shelter, a safe place for kids. And so, have you witnessed children huddled in here before?
In here specifically, no, but in other bomb shelters I have. I
Okay.
happen to actually grow up in Kiryat Shmona. It's one of the northern cities in Israel. And we grew up under a very similar reality as those living here, with bombing from Hezbollah up in Lebanon. And today it's Israelis living along the Gaza border who are being continuously bombarded with rocket fire, mortar fire. Here the mortars don't reach, but here it's mostly the rocket fire. And even though there are no hits, or there is very little fatality rate, I mean very little, maybe on one hand I could count, as far as I can remember, the amount of people that were actually killed through any of those attacks. Yet the real damage is, like we keep talking about, is the PTSD. That is the ultimate toll that we have incurred along these communities.
Well, so many expressions of PTSD. Talking about earlier about for children peeing,
Yeah,
you know,
wetting their beds.
because they can't control their bodily functions,
Yeah.
and of course the anxiety, extreme anxiety, panic attacks,
Yeah.
and when a sound can trigger the emotions or flashbacks.
Well, we lived here for 3 years actually, my wife and I and our 2 children. And today my 7-year-old, at the time she was about 3, I think, 3 or 4. We were living along the Gaza communities here, farther from the border. But still, just the fact that we heard the sirens and that we went to our shelters, and I knew for a fact that it was highly unlikely that my community would be targeted, because it was very small, much smaller than this, and very far away from the border. Yet, just that experience alone caused traumatic stress for my daughter. I remember till not too long ago, she was fearful from noises, wet her bed, all those things that I said that kids have experienced, I've experienced with my own family, with my own kids. And that's with a family where the father is a security person. I don't get stressed by the rockets. We calmly take them to the shelter. We don't even tell them what's happening, who's firing at us, but just the fact that we went through the motions of going from the norm to, all right, children, let's go to the bomb shelter. Let's go over here. Let's, keeping on a very low key. Yet they still have been affected by those, by the after fact, or the aftermath of these attacks.
Well, you think about how PTSD affects children's emotional development. Kids would have opportunity to have freedom to play, openly play,
Yeah.
but they're being restricted in this environment, so it shunts their emotional development, and a lot of serious problems here. And so, what would you encourage people to do that they're hearing this today, this story, how they can get involved to help the people here in Sderot?
2 things. Number 1, be aware. And within that, becoming aware, make others aware. And secondly, pray. Because there's really not much else you can do if you're on the other side of the world. But if you're becoming aware and you make others aware, that's going to help, hopefully, for others to realize the reality that these people are living under, and hopefully that will lead to some kind of action. And maybe you can think of some kind of action that you can do, some kind of petition that you can make, some kind of social gathering in your community to stand up for these defenseless people. They did nothing wrong for anybody. They're not squatting on anybody's land. All they are is living in close proximity to the Gaza border that is controlled by terrorists. And that's really the only crime, is their proximity to those folks. And so I would say pray for them. Pray for the children of Gaza. Pray for the families living in Gaza that are under the control of that terror reign, because they're also affected. They also have PTSD.
Yes.
Not the same, but I can imagine being bombarded by rocket fire, or not rocket fire, from Air Force attacks that have to retaliate to the rocket fire.
Yeah.
That's going to make you live under that trauma and stress, them as well. So on both sides, they're casualties. Both sides, the children are losing in this war. And I think that's something that the world needs to be aware of. And secondly, that's something that people can pray for these children to hopefully, by God's grace, get recovered from all of that trauma.
Is there a website that people can learn more about what's going on here? How they can perhaps get involved?
Unfortunately, no. The communities here don't speak English. A lot of the people here don't speak English. They don't know how to communicate to the world. There was, at some point, a media branch that was doing something here, but they had to move on and they were doing other things. So unfortunately, really, very few people are able to express what's going on here. And a lot of the security personnel and the first responders that live here actually have approached me and said, Doron, use your social network, your websites, your Facebook and whatever, and please tell our story. So for one, you could follow me on Facebook. You could go follow after my reporting. And I do my best, again, by living outside of these communities, to come here as often as I can and to get firsthand reporting from what's happening on the ground.
So people can contact you through the website, Cry for Zion, and that website again is?
Yes, sir. Cryforzion.com. And we have a way where contact us. You go there and it sends an email to us and we'll respond to you for sure.
You know, what about donations that could be made to families to help with their needs here as well?
Yeah, well, if people want to give to Cry for Zion and they put Security South and they earmark their donation Security South, because Cry for Zion is a 501c3 in the U.S. registered. So what we would do is, because we've adopted some of the communities, we can't help all of them, but I've specifically created contact with one of the frontline communities just outside the Gaza border in what's called the Otef Aza, the Gaza envelope. And what they've done is they've approached me and I've responded and said, I will adopt you guys. I will adopt this security personnel and I will do my best to any funds that come to our organization to direct it to them, and then they can purchase first aid gear, they can purchase body armor that they need, helmets for the first responders that are literally under that fire attack, and they're the ones running around while rockets are falling.
There's so many ways to be practically involved. Prayer is number one, and they do what they can to support Cry for Zion and support for people here. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a very special time to be here in Sderot. Thankfully, we don't have any rockets coming this way, but you never know, it could change at any moment. So please pray for the people here in Sderot and elsewhere in Israel, for those that are really affected seriously by PTSD and their lives being affected. The solution is not to run away when threatened by this, but to face your enemy and to learn how to deal with this here, and miraculously that we will have peace one day. Pray for us, as my good friend here said about Doron, about praying for the people in Gaza is so crucial. And those in Syria, victims by Hamas and Hezbollah. We can make a difference. Pray that people will find their hope in Christ Yeshua. Here at a playground here in Sderot, and wonderful opportunity for children to play. But that actually can be disrupted at any moment with a sound of a rocket or a bullet here. So please pray for the children here that are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, very serious. Pray for the people up here. And then, of course, we're going to be going to a city to the border of Gaza, and pray for the people in Gaza as well. But think about the children, that they will be able to have a healthy life and develop without this PTSD.
More of what we saw earlier. And see how they do the paintings on them to try to soften the blow that it's a bomb shelter. Alright? Like, oh look, fun little drawings or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing fun about that.
No.
And they know it.
it's hard to imagine without seeing an attack, you know, kind of the impact,
Yeah.
because I'm not used to it. To me, it seems like a virtual reality.
It's surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally understand.
It seems like a movie or something.
Right.
It's hard to really fully empathise. Well, I do empathise, but
I know what you mean.
it's
It's hard to relate to something you've not experienced.
yeah.
For sure.
But I got a small minor PTSD for about 2 months. I went to the Syria border a couple of years ago and I witnessed an ISIS battle just in the town above the border,
Yeah.
and I saw things blowing up. I felt it very loud,
Yeah.
but when I went back to the UK I would hear a loud noise and I would be taken back to that moment.
Correct.
It's just like that's I can't imagine what it must be like for people who actually go through it.
Yeah.
And for yourself in the army, you know, that would really screw me up if I was in a full-on war.
Well, there's no way to be part of trauma, something traumatic, in that trauma not affecting you. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. There's the playground I talked about.
Oh yeah.
There's the bit about here.
Oh, there's the rabbi. Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
It's everywhere.
yeah. This is it right here. Go ahead and pull off. Well, I'll pull off with the blue and white at least. That way, I want to encourage getting a ticket, so to speak. Of course, this one is like, oh man, these people are filming again. For when they put up their little booths and so on. to sell
Insides.
their produce.
Driving through Stroud.
So I'm actually going to take us to the newer part. This is only in the past 2 years that they built this new shopping complex up ahead where we're going. So on the one hand, you have part of the city kind of dying. This, I think, is a new development to help revive the city, and it's combined with two things. It's A, the new shopping center, but also B, the new train system that comes right by it. So you're bringing clients, so to speak, or customers from other parts of the country that they could potentially get off at this train station and go to the shopping center here, grab something to eat, get back on the train and keep going wherever they were traveling from or to. And so I think that's part of the strategy, the business strategy of this new mall that you see right here on the left. So this is brand new as of 2 years ago. They just opened it. And it actually seems that the business is going pretty well here. It's off of one of the main highways here in the south. It brings people from different parts of the south. And then right there is the train station with the new train stop, which I forget how many years that is, but that's also fairly new. When my family and I lived here 3 years ago, this did not exist. There was nothing here. There's actually desert, like sand. And then they ended up popping up this new train stop and all of this that you see here. So in a way, hope in the madness.